after the presentation. We encourage you to reach out to us with any other questions or ideas that you may have, particularly as we launch our impact funds for support for workforce development programs. Thanks so much, Shana. I look forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Laura, and welcome everyone. We're so glad that you're here and really proud to be presenting this work today. I'm Shana Cohen. I'm managing partner with the food systems consultancy KK&P. And with me today are my colleagues Claire Bramhall and Brian Descourt, who were my partners in this project. This project really centered on workforce-related challenges in the dairy industry because they're a central barrier to growth and stability within the industry, which is a topic that had come up in a number of NADBIC-related projects prior to this. We found that challenges span entry-level to management occupations, that they play out across the dairy supply chain, that they impact farming, processing, and distribution. Workforce challenges are impacting businesses of all sizes, and that some of the challenges are unique to the region. Some are specific to certain places, others are specific to dairy industries, and still others mirror challenges that are faced by employers and managers and workers and job seekers across all industries around the country. So our charge in this project was twofold. It was to execute research to understand the nuance of the regional dairy business workforce challenges, including identifying a small set of specific and high priority occupations that were in need of particular attention and support. And then to use those research findings to define an implementation plan for a pilot workforce initiative that the NADBIC could lead to begin to alleviate those challenges. And so that's what we did. Our work happened in two phases, the first of which was focused on, as I said, understanding the landscape and defining the problem, and narrowing the project focus as quickly as possible to a priority set of issues to get to a point of depth rather than breadth within this very large set of related challenges in the workforce sector. And then the second phase, which we've just completed, was developing the plan, developing and workshopping a workforce initiative, refining that vision with some of the key stakeholders that we talked to in phase one, and then developing that plan for implementation, which we're going to share today. Our research was pretty extensive. We did interviews, we did an employer survey, we did targeted data analysis, including quantitative data from the Census of Agriculture from the USDA and the Bureau of Labor Statistics to get a quantitative picture to complement the qualitative research that we were doing. We did an environmental scan where we mapped the landscape of regionally based training programs and resources around the region. We engaged with an advisory committee over the course of the work, including representatives from the NADBIC, the Northeast Association of State Departments of Agriculture, and several other program partners across the region. In the stakeholder engagement that we did, we heard from quite a range of folks. We did 14 interviews. We had 44 survey responses. We did a focus group. We did additional outreach and informal discussions and conversations with program leads. And then as we were developing the plan, we did an additional 14 interviews and conversations, as well as 2 focus groups. And in that work, we really sought to reach a broad range of dairy industry stakeholders, employers and managers ranging from small producers with just a few employees to really large processors and farms with over 500 employees. And many business interviews that were in the medium scale middle of that big range. We also talked to many businesses with employers or managers that oversee vertically integrated businesses that include farm production, processing, delivery, distribution functions. And we sought in all of this to reach as great a geographic diversity as possible across the 11-state region that the NADBIC oversees. And here's what we found. I'm going to share some of the high-level themes that we heard across interviews and surveys, in particular in phase one, that really shaped the initiative and plan that we have collaboratively developed with the NADBIC. We heard that entry-level and early career farm production, processing, and driving roles were some of the most challenging occupations for employers to fill and for them to retain workers in once they filled those positions. employers described a shrinking pipeline of prospective workers and insufficient applicants to fill job vacancies, especially for entry-level positions, but not only for entry-level positions. We heard that employers were seeking workers from a really wide variety of places and labor pools, including high schools, community colleges, technical colleges. They were working with immigrant labor pools and visa programs, individuals transitioning from work in other industries, a really diverse set of sources, and yet these challenges persist and the shrinking pipeline was clear. We heard that employee retention has become increasingly difficult for businesses across sectors. And this was true on the agriculture side and on the processing side. One large-scale employer that we talked to, a processor, said that it wasn't unusual for his plant to have up to 25% of their jobs vacant at any given moment, which significantly decreases the plant's ability to meet demand, to grow, to improve, and of the leadership of the business, of course, to lead and develop strategies, with leaders of businesses working on the processing floor and shift work in many cases to fill those gaps. We also heard that though employers see a really close connection between employee retention and in-house opportunities for growth, not all jobs naturally lead to career pathways. Some employers that we spoke with drew a distinction between jobs and careers, implying that some roles in their businesses really aren't intended to be launching pads for careers over the long term, but indicated that those roles could be if they thought about them in a different way. And this close connection between employee retention and in-house opportunities for growth and career development was something that employers saw across the board, while also mentioning that in order to really make use of that idea and leverage that idea, that supervisors within many, many businesses would need more training to be skilled managers in their roles. We heard that business services that build capacity for increased employee retention are seen as a key form of workforce development. Employers described time and again how their lack of internal dedicated human resources staff or management skills was exacerbating workforce challenges within their business. We heard quite a lot about workers facing systemic barriers to employment and training within the dairy sector as well. And a lot of the challenges that came up are not unique to dairy. They're experienced economy-wide across America and across industries. And those challenges included affordable housing. This was true with on-farm housing as well as housing in towns near to farms and near to processing facilities. And this came out in particularly sharp relief in our phase 2 outreach. Transportation, access to health insurance and healthcare, and all of these compounded by language barriers, which can really impede access to training in particular, which in turn compromises workplace safety and can stunt workplace communication, which jeopardizes product quality, workplace safety, and a number of other factors on the job. We heard that the dairy workforce landscape is adapting to shifts in policy and developments in technology, and that these shifts are and will continue to impact the shape of jobs. Two specific themes that came up were related to immigration and a general uncertainty that employers are feeling around immigration policy changes. Rather than specific concerns about policy shifts, there was a more general feeling about the shift in immigration policy and what that would mean in terms of access to workers coming from abroad. Overtime hour laws have changed in some states, and this was of concern to a number of employers as well, and it was changing the way they think about scheduling jobs and the number of people they need to employ. Employers talked a lot about balancing investment in technology with investments in workers and labor, and this is a critical question folks are facing right now. One producer processor put it pretty succinctly. He said, either we add another person or we add a piece of equipment. And given the challenge of hiring people and employing people, technology is starting to look more and more attractive. We heard that businesses have access to a broad suite of dairy workforce training assets, but that a lot of employers interviewed aren't using them yet. One of the technical assistance providers that we spoke to in this research said there are a lot of existing resources. The challenge to farmers and processors as well is knowing what they are and how to utilize them. And I think we heard that mirrored across the board in conversations with employers of uncertainty about what's out there, what's best fit for their business, what's a quality program, what fits their particular needs and conditions. And across the board, over and over again, interviewees gave us a consistent charge to leverage, complement, and increase access to existing programs and resources, and not to reinvent the wheel. So we took all of that information and launched into the next piece of our work, which was creating 3 key issue briefs, which each included a description of the issue and how that issue is playing out within the 11-state region, a description of the universe of solutions that are currently being employed to address the issues, including highlights of some regional programs and organizations that folks mentioned are really standing out to them as making a dent in some issues that have felt quite intractable for quite a long time. And then we highlighted opportunities and barriers. We're not going to go in depth into all of these issue briefs, but wanted to tell you a little bit about them so that you know they're there and can access them in our report when that is released, which will be very soon. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Claire to share a little bit about the landscape that we describe in those briefs.
Thank you, Shana. So I'm going to be talking about our 3 issue briefs, as Shana mentioned. And the first issue brief is focused on building a pipeline of reliable workers, and that's focused on both youth and adult job seekers. The second issue brief is focused on developing clearly articulated career pathways to increase employee opportunity and retention. And the last issue brief is focused on business services as part of workforce development. And that issue brief is really focused on training managers to create a culture and a workplace where employees thrive. And before we dive into each of these, I want to say that these 3 issue briefs aren't mutually exclusive. They are very much interconnected. The importance of strong, stable businesses as an attractive landing place for newly built pipeline of reliable workers is a great example. Another one is the role of well-developed and well-articulated career pathways and contributing and creating an attractive pipeline is another example. And so in the Northeast, there are an array of workforce assets, both established and emerging, that begin to address these issues. And so these issue briefs, as Shana mentioned, are really focused to shine a spotlight on these initiatives and celebrate what they're building, and then to begin to identify opportunities to support and complement their growth and impact. And so our first issue brief is focused on building a pipeline to increase the supply of dairy workers. And so we have 3 components of this issue brief, which include building awareness of the dairy industry career among youth, creating access to term-limited experiences, and then offering skill building opportunities to job seekers. What's important to note about these 3 is that they're very distinct pipelines, and so they have distinct audiences, varying benefits, different timelines for growing the pipeline of workers to the dairy industry, and also different timelines on which individual businesses would feel a direct benefit from focusing on any 3 of these. For the first one, building awareness of dairy industry career among youth, you can think of your typical, 4-H programs or Future Farmers of America. And then another example is the Center for Dairy Excellence's Discover Dairy and Dairy Leaders of Tomorrow. And then the second area, creating access to term-limited experiences, is what you can think of as maybe your more traditional internships. And an example of this is the Anne Saxelby Legacies Fund. That is what they call an apprenticeship, but similar to an internship. And then lastly, offering skill building opportunities to job seekers. So we see this through pre-apprenticeship programs and different types of boot camps. And so all 3 of these are really focused on building interest in dairy careers and preparedness for dairy careers, and then eventually building out this more robust supply of workers. Okay, and then our second issue brief is focused on developing career pathways. And again, we kind of have 3 components of this. The first is registered apprenticeship. The second is certificate and associate degree programs, and then standalone trainings. And To start with registered apprenticeship, this is really an emerging solution that is relatively new to the dairy industry as compared to other industries. And for folks who are not familiar with the registered apprenticeship model, it's a federally recognized post-secondary credential that uses a earn while you learn model to take individuals from one occupational level or wage level to the next. And so there's the dairy herd manager, dairy specialist, dairy processor, and dairy grazing registered apprenticeships. And in some cases, there are also pre-apprenticeships associated with those. And the next bucket is certificate and associate degree programs. So this includes micro-credentials as well as a more traditional degree that's offered at colleges and universities across the Northeast. And then lastly, we have the standalone training. This can also be a part of the related technical instruction or RTI for registered apprenticeships, but you can think of Ag Extension as a big component of those standalone training offerings. And again, you know, each of these buckets is really focused on skill building and career advancement with the aim to increase employee retention. Okay, and then lastly, we have business services. So thinking of the services and supports that are needed to increase employee retention in the dairy industry. And again, we have three components of that, which are financial and business planning supports, training to build managerial skills, and then support for process adaptations that reshape jobs. Financial and business planning supports is what you would probably think of typically. So that's access to capital, access to human resources, business planning assistance and advising. A great example is that is the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center, and obviously the services that they offer. For the next bucket, training to build managerial skills. In the Northeast, there is a wide array of entities that are providing services related to this. A great example of this is Cornell's Ag Supervisory Leadership Program, where participants engage in leadership concepts and practice skills that improve their ability to build, you know, a more supportive workplace and advance the business. And then lastly, we have support for process adaptations that reshape jobs. And so this is really focused on, you know, changing the job itself. This can be small changes that are around shifting processing schedules to align with worker schedules, or it could be larger shifts such as, you know, switching from twice a day milking to alternative milking schedules. And again, you can think of Extension as playing a big role in offering these types of supports. And so each of these components is critical to building, you know, the workplace culture, work-life balance within a business, and obviously increasing workplace safety. And these are all components that help to build employee retention. And I'll turn it back over to you, Shana.
Thank you, Claire. So we did all of that research. We did interviews, we did surveys, we hosted focus groups, we analyzed quantitative data, we took it all and synthesized it into those issue briefs, taking our environmental scan as well and kind of mapping it onto the issues that we were hearing about. And then at the conclusion of that research, we had to figure out what to do. And so the next section is about how we went about translating those findings into action and what is growing from this research now. So at the conclusion of that research, the Dairy Business Innovation Center decided to create a dedicated fund to support the expansion and impact of existing and new dairy workforce initiatives around the region in a way that would blend some of those issues that came up in the issue briefs that Claire was just describing. Phase 2 research and planning were dedicated to defining and designing for the most effective way to do that. So what we did was to develop an initial framework for a fund and test and refine it in roundtables and small groups and one-on-one conversations with some of the key program leaders and stakeholders around the region whose work and whose names came up in the course of research, including employers, registered apprenticeship program leads, advocates for dairy workers, training providers, worker pipeline program leaders, and more. And with their input and feedback and questions, emerged the work that we're about to share, which is the Dairy Workforce Impact Fund. The Dairy Workforce Impact Fund is designed to spark, grow, share, and invest in solutions to key workforce challenges experienced across the region in agricultural and processing businesses, and for the employees of those businesses. This is a pilot fund that will be implemented starting now until September 2026, with immediate pilot funding of $1.215 million to disperse. And the structure of the fund will be at one round of directed funds, which will be released this fall, and 2 rounds of competitive funds. The fund priorities are to strengthen the pipeline, to expand the pipeline of new entrants to the industry, to build skills and career opportunities, elevate trainings and programs that increase worker career opportunities and pathways, increase worker retention by investing in workplace culture and management to improve worker experience and increase retention, and to decrease barriers to participation in dairy industry jobs and training programs for current employees and for new entrants to the industry. So it's these 4 priorities that the fund will seek to advance. And it will seek to do that through 2 distinct approaches. The first is we're calling Catalyze, which is to invest in piloting, strengthening, and increasing the reach and impact of effective regional workforce initiatives. And the second approach is to convene, to bring stakeholders together for targeted peer-to-peer learning and collaborative problem solving. The Catalyze funds will be meant to elevate and enhance workforce solutions that are already out there in the region, to expand pilot programming or nascent and new programming, to spark new opportunities to support regional dairy employers and workers. And by workers, we're referring here to those who are already working in the industry and those who have not yet found the industry, but who are ripe for work within the dairy industry. In the Catalyze approach, the fund's first investments will be directed allocations based on findings from this research undertaking. And then other Catalyze funds will be dedicated to stakeholder-initiated projects through an open call for proposals. The Convene approach will provide dedicated funds with support from DBIC staff or consultant capacity for facilitation and coordination supports to bring employers and program leads, their supporters, and any others together to focus on a specific opportunity or issue with a clearly defined purpose and a timeline and clear desired outcomes. Convenings can be composed of small or large groups of people, or they might be single gatherings, or it might be a series. They can be defined narrowly or broadly, and they might happen virtually or in person. And as with the Catalyze approach, the initial Convene investments will be directed allocations based on this body of research, and then 2 rounds of competitive grants will open to enable folks to propose their own convenings to advance solutions to dairy workforce challenges across the region. This diagram provides a bit of an overview of how the funds and how those 2 approaches intersect with each other as unique bodies of investment in Catalyze and Convene, but also as a middle ground where you might have initiatives that are receiving funds both to catalyze a program and to convene a group of stakeholders around that program to advance it and improve it. We're going to share a bit about the directed funds that are going to be going out as the initial round of funding for the Dairy Workforce Impact Fund. But before I do, I wanted to share, it's important to note that there are a number of strong and critical workforce and training assets that are serving the region's industry. So how did we choose what the directed funds should go to in this round? There are a number of strong entities and producers that could have received funds in this round. We chose those that seemed poised and ready for expansion now, that had a strong foundation for growing a new idea or some programmatic element they've been wanting to try. We chose a mix of programs that touch on all 4 of the fund's priorities and that reach across as much of the 11-state Northeast region as possible, and which serve dairy farm and processor companies of a range of sizes. Beyond those entities that are receiving directed funds right now, there are a number of others that meet those criteria, including probably many folks who are on this call. And the competitive grant rounds are designed to reach and catalyze their work, your work, over the next few years. So rather than talking through this diagram, I'll go into each of the individual shapes on it in the next slides that follow. One recipient of Catalyze Approach funds will be the Center for Dairy Excellence's Dairy Herd Manager Apprenticeship Program. This is an apprenticeship program that has been registered at the state level, and the goal here is to register it nationally and work with local entities across the Northeast to expand that registered apprenticeship into other states. Having a registered apprenticeship registered nationally allows other states to benefit from this program without having to recreate the framework or content from the ground up, which can be very time consuming and difficult to do with a significant administrative burden around it. So having a program with a strong coordinating core for both the structure of the program and the training that is a part of that program housed within the Center for Dairy Excellence will be a significant boon to any entity around the region seeking to grow registered apprenticeship in order to support dairy herd manager positions. So what the Center for Dairy Excellence will work on through this is to submit the registered apprenticeship paperwork to the Federal Department of Labor, really work out some of the business model elements for hosting a national apprenticeship program, establish that approach for related technical instruction, the off-the-job training that supports the mentored on-the-job learning that a registered apprentice will do, and develop some relationships across the region to ensure that the program meets broader employer needs and spurs interest of folks around the region and really builds employer participation. The Center for Dairy Excellence will also participate with other dairy industry registered apprenticeship champions and providers around the region in a convene approach funded element, which we'll talk about in just a bit. A second recipient of directed funds through the Dairy Workforce Impact Fund will be Cornell's Agricultural Supervisory Leadership Program. This program came up time and again in talking to all different kinds of stakeholders as a leading and effective example of a kind of a training program that builds management skills and capacity that many think of as something that you can't train for. Many people rise into management positions based on skills that they have in the jobs that they do, not their ability to coordinate people, to motivate people, to retain employees, to teach. And that is what this program focuses on. The kinds of management skills and capacity that improve culture within a workplace and communication in a workplace to provide growth opportunities for prospective leaders and managers. And in doing so, to set the stage for increased employee retention, both manager retention and strength and the retention of the employees that they manage. With funding from this program, the Agricultural Supervisory Leadership Program will be able to offer some scholarships to offset tuition costs for dairy businesses around the region, grow the number of dairy businesses and regional dairy businesses that participate in their program now, which is open to businesses across agricultural sectors and across the nation and the world. Add instructors with some amount of regional dairy expertise and really to leverage what they're doing, which already exists in both English and in Spanish, offering a tremendous opportunity for a strong Spanish language workforce that is poised to rise into management positions within the region. The third and final of the directed Catalyze funds will go to the Anne Saxelby Legacy Fund for a new program they're piloting called the Immersive Alumni Apprenticeship Program. This program builds on the success of their very popular one-month apprenticeship program and is really meant to give alumni of that program, those who have proven an interest in agriculture, proven an interest in dairy, proven they want something longer, to go into a 3 to 4 month experience in order to really capture and build on young adults' interests in the dairy industry, and to do a deep dive on some kind of specific project with the dairy business in order to capture that attention and passion for the dairy industry and parlay it into a longer term relationship with the industry and work within the industry. Funding to the Anne Saxelby Legacy Fund will go to offset participant costs from transportation to housing to wages. And critically, providing that funding will diversify the range of business owners who are able to host an apprentice. while also allowing the region to benefit from this really strong organization's pilot effort at something new. On the convene side, there will be directed funding that goes to a registered apprenticeship program leaders cohort. Registered apprenticeship, as you heard, emerged frequently in the course of our research. And there are programs popping up in multiple locations across the Northeast, in agriculture and in processing businesses, and for a range of occupations at the very entry level, and as you heard with the Sarett Center for Dairy Excellence, up to the dairy herd manager level. Many of these programs are in very early stages. They're either just registered with a few participants or not quite registered in their state and still working out administrative and implementation kinks, trying to connect with employer partners, working to introduce this model that is tried and true in so many other industries into dairy. The goal here is to develop a strategic approach to minimizing obstacles to registered apprenticeship implementation and to bring these folks together to work collaboratively and strategically to embed registered apprenticeship as a training model within the dairy industry. The cohort can focus on critical themes like related training instruction. Where does the training come from? Aligning competencies. What are the things that apprentices should learn? What are the skills they should build that they didn't start with? How do you unify a marketing or messaging effort to bring employers into a registered apprenticeship program and have them understand the value? And any other set of themes or topics that the group chooses to talk about. It will be up to them to determine what the priority topics for discussion are within that. Upon concluding the convening series with DBIC's approval, the participating stakeholders will be given an opportunity to collaboratively allocate catalyze funds towards whatever they see as the most promising investment for advancing registered apprenticeship as a model within the dairy industry around the region. So far, invited participants for this cohort include Cayuga Milk Ingredients and Cayuga Marketing, CASA Sustainable Agriculture, the Dairy Grazers Apprenticeship, Cornell Ag Workforce Development, Patterson Farms, the Wolf's Neck Center for Agriculture and the Environment, and the Upstate Niagara Cooperative, all entities that are working hard toward registered apprenticeship in one way or another within their organizations. In addition to the registered apprenticeship program leaders cohort, there will also be dedicated funding for employers who are participating in Catalyze funded projects. And they will be invited into a convening series that will bring employers specifically together to learn from each other's trials and successes and failures. This was something we heard a lot about from employers in the course of our research, kind of a hunger to learn from what each other are doing, but an incredible amount of incredible constrained time to do that kind of a learning. And so paying attention to what employers will value most and structuring a convening where they can learn from what each other are trying, and then here at maybe middle or end points, what did they learn? What did they try? What worked? What didn't? In addition to the directed funds, we've also provided a little bit of direction for the first competitive round one grant round for the convene approach. And that is that there be a priority within round one on addressing dairy worker housing needs. This is a critical need that came up. Access to affordable housing is a really leading impediment to hiring and retention on farms and in processing businesses. And it's felt particularly acutely in rural settings and in small towns. It's a huge issue, but this is not a huge pot of money. And so we thought hard about what the best way is to use the funds that the DBIC has to advance a solution towards this critical issue. And so in round one, the priority will be given to projects or convenings that can address a worker housing need and seek solutions that respond to the shape of the challenge within the region specifically, or within a smaller subregion within the Northeast. Stakeholders that could participate would include community development-centered real estate experts, dairy industry employers, rural housing policy advocates, worker advocates, government agencies, CDFIs, mission-focused financial experts, a whole universe of people who are thinking creatively about housing issues. And our hope is that the round one competitive grants within the Convene approach will help to begin to advance some of the challenges that folks are facing within this issue. Just a brief overview of the timeline for this. You can see the dark purple dots and lines are the round one competitive grants. The lime green dots and lines are the directed funds, and the round two competitive grants are shown in the wine color there. Just to give a sense of how the directed funds, round one funds, and round two funds will be distributed over the next couple of years. One final thing I want to emphasize is just who's eligible to apply for these funds. Who's it for? These funds are really meant for stakeholders across the dairy industry within the region, including dairy industry employers who are located within the DBIC's 11-state region, in agriculture and in processing sectors, including businesses of all sizes, as well as nonprofit organizations, academic institutions, advocacy organizations, or trade associations that are located in the region and or dedicated to supporting the Northeast dairy sector. And a huge range of kinds of projects are eligible to apply for these funds as well. They can focus on one business in one place, the broader industry, the full region, or really anything in between, as long as they're seeking to advance those 4 critical priority areas that the Dairy Workforce Impact Fund has been designed to address. So I think we'll pause there for now and see if there are any questions from the group. If people would like to post to the chat, our team can read out those questions and start to address them. Laura and Catherine, if you have any additional comments you'd like to make or anything you'd like to add to our presentation, be very happy for you to do that as well, of course.
Thanks, Shana. Yeah, I hope folks know they can certainly ask questions now, or folks can email me afterwards or give me a phone call regarding the next steps for this. We will be developing the grant applications over the coming months, and so we don't have specifics to share yet, but do stay in touch and up to date with the Dairy Business Innovation Center's newsletter and website for more information there.
If anyone prefers to unmute to ask a question or to comment on anything that resonated or that you might have a question about within the research or in the structure of the fund, please feel free to do so with your voice or in the chat. I want to say while we're waiting, if anybody does want to put in a question, that there were just scores of people across the region that were engaged in the various steps of research and planning for this project from last summer through today. And they included a huge range of people from dairy farmers and processors, training providers, champions of workforce program models, leaders of public agencies from across the region, advocates for dairy workers, researchers and economists who study dairy workforce dynamics, other sector experts, and their participation truly shaped this research and defined the contours of what this fund is and has become. It was designed to really expand solutions that are trying to move the needle on some dairy workforce challenges that have felt intractable for many for a long time. And we're really excited about how folks across the region can leverage some of the research that was done and this funding that the DBIC is putting out into the world to expand the pipeline of workers into the industry, to elevate programs that are increasing worker career opportunity and pathways, to invest in strong workplace management, to increase worker retention, and to decrease barriers that people are facing to accepting positions and building skills and to growing within the dairy farm and processing jobs and industries across the region. Do a final open call for questions. I want to thank you all so much for your time and for your interest. We have your email addresses from your registration, and we'll keep you posted as the fund has news to share and announcements and opportunities to share. In the meantime, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your attention and really look forward to seeing how you use this fund to grow good work and good opportunity within the industry. Thank you.